Hi, my name is Zaquanna and I'll be talking about the banning of the Confederate flag. So, according to usflag.org website received on November 15, 2018, the Confederate flag was the best-known Confederate battle flag, which was carried by Confederate troops in a field where the vast majority were forces under the Confederate Army. These soldiers flew this flag in battle with the mindset that supported slavery. So even though Confederate flags are used to represent a particular culture, Confederate flags should be banned because Confederate flags symbolizes inhumane events and represented those who cherished the inhumane act of slavery. I have always been fantasized with history while taking many courses and events such as National History Day that discuss the area of the Confederate flag and the birth of the Civil War. Throughout my research and event involvement, it has come to my knowledge that the Confederate flag should be banned because its origins were made to represent a group that wanted to keep the inhumane acts of slavery against Black Americans in the South in the United States. Living in the South, there's a lot of people who proudly use the Confederate flag as a symbol that represents them, whether it's on their clothing or necessities. Many people in the South likely use this flag as a symbol of their culture. However, it is important to do this persuasive speech to persuade everyone in the audience to realize that the Confederate flag, in fact, was not made for a culture, but rather it symbolizes those who supported slavery during the Civil War. So I'll be talking about the history of the Confederate flag, the problems of why it's still being flown in the South. I'll be discussing a little bit about the opposing viewpoints of my claim. Also, I'll be discussing why the flag should be banned and why it would help America as a whole, not just African Americans. So now I'll be discussing the history of the Confederate flag. The understanding of the Confederate flag comes from the understanding of the Civil War and what was exactly going on during the 1800s in America. The Civil War is important to understand when understanding the birth of the Confederate flag because those who used this flag during the battles were the battles and tensions during the Civil War. So, according to Corbett P. Scott et al. From the U.S. History OpenStax College textbook, retrieved on November 15, 2018, in 1861, the United States was a war called the Civil War until 1865, which claimed the lives of over 600,000 soldiers. It was a war to save the Union, but also to end slavery. During this time, there was a huge split between the North and the South. It was a huge debate on whether new states to be slave states or remain free. The North wanted to end slavery, while the South wanted to keep slavery because it was the main income source during that time in the South. Again, according to Corbett P. Scott et al. From the same OpenStax textbook source retrieved on November 15, 2018, 7 Deep South states formed the new government. The state thought that they could withdraw their consent to be controlled by the federal government. A new Confederacy was formed in February of 1861. The Confederate Constitution declared that the new state existed to defend racial slavery and the leadership of the slaveholding class. Since I gave a little background history of the tension going on in America during the early 1800s, I am now going to introduce the problem currently of the Confederate flag still being flown in the United States. According to usflag.org website retrieved on November 15, 2018 again, these deep South states soon were symbolized by a flag that was named the official flag of the Confederacy, starting in March of 1861. Even though this flag was created to represent these deep South states that wanted to support the inhumane act of slavery, it's still being allowed to be flown in America. However, there are still those that have opposing viewpoints towards this claim. Even though opposing viewpoints believe this flag should not represent slavery, but however it represents a sense of culture in the South, there still needs to be a solution on the banning of a flag that origin was originally created to support and defend slavery. To end this controversy, there should be another flag that represents the South than a flag that represents such a humane time for Black Americans. This flag is an ongoing issue because it's still being flown in most South states. According to Donna Ladd from the Guardian.com website, published on August 6, 2018, and retrieved on November 15, 2018, many white people in the South stated that the Confederate flag was a sign of historic pride, such as liberalism. However, these flags are used in pro-white rallies, including KKK events, to symbolize white supremacy. This flag is far from being prideful and taking ownership of a particular culture in the South. This flag should be banned because it is still being used today to spread hatred and supremacy for a race. Many people that have held this flag for being prideful are far from it, such as Daniel Ruth, who killed 9 Black people in a South Carolina church. How is this flag so prideful if it is still being used today to spread hatred? Because of this, I want everyone to realize that the only solution towards this issue is to ban this flag from America. America will not be the only country who does this, but countries such as Germany took their own hands to ban a flag that origins were built around hatred. Banning the American flag will bring comfort to those who have ancestors who suffered through such an inhumane event that majority of people in the South supported. Germany also banned a flag that symbolizes hatred. According to YUC Psychoses in America but Not Germany by Sarah Woodman, published by Fox on August 17, 2017 and retrieved on November 15, 2018, even though America still allowed freedom of speech in rallies such as the KKK and other hate-form groups, Germany has banned Nazi symbols as well as hatred speech from Germany. Germans can also be even sent to jail for denying that the Holocaust even existed. According to a complete list of every place that wants to ban the Confederate flag by Jill, published on June 23, 2015 and retrieved on November 15, 2018, states such as California, South Carolina, and companies such as Walmart and eBay has called for the flag to be banned in some form. This is a huge issue because this flag represents an inhumane event of pain and struggle for African Americans. It should be called to be banned for the comfort and first step to moving on as a country. Concluding my main and opposing viewpoints, I want to show how this would benefit America as a whole, not just African Americans. We all have young cousins or either young siblings that's growing up in our school systems. If we teach them that it's okay to fly a Confederate flag that was supported by people who supported slavery, we're teaching them that slavery is okay. We're teaching them that the Confederate flag is okay to be flown even though it represented such a humane time event for African Americans. I have discussed the history of the Confederate flag, the solution to this issue, and why they should be banned, the benefits of banning this flag. I haven't changed your mind yet. I wanted you to look at this point of view. As an African American, the last thing I want to look at is a flag that represents the stealing of my identity, the stealing of my ancestors, the stealing of my culture, the stealing of my family's last name, and the dehumanizing and killing that was brought upon more than 2 million slaves. The next time you see the Confederate flag, I don't want any of you to think of it as just a part of a culture. I want you to all think of it as a symbol that ruined the identities of African American generations. I'll never know my true tribe. I will never know where I truly came from. And that's because those who supported that flag took that away from me. Thank you. Any questions?
Okay, I really like your speech. I actually agree with a lot of your main points. But I was wondering, since you want to get rid of the Confederate flag, what do you think about the Confederate statues of war generals? Do you think they should be pulled down too, or should they remain up for historical context or preserved in some way?
So she's asking about the Confederate flags and the statues, and I know there's a lot of conversities, such as in campuses, that people want it to be taken down. I feel as though it should be preserved in maybe history museums because it is a part of our culture, and I feel like people should still know who was on the Confederate side, who was on the Union side. They should still know their history. However, I don't think we should be idolizing them like they did something great because they still supported slavery and it was such a bad time in America. As Americans, we should be put together. They wanted us to be separated. I think people should understand that growing up in America. Yes.
Great speech. I could really sense your passion about the topic, and I really enjoy history as well. But why should the Confederacy be viewed as negative if it was not to the Confederate?
So if it was not to the Confederate?
If it was not viewed to negative as to the Confederates, why should it be viewed negative to anybody else?
Are you talking about the Black Americans and the whites in the Confederacy? So he's talking about how it should be viewed as negative when African Americans and white Caucasians were in the Confederacy. So I got a lot of my research from the same history textbook, college textbook. And so during the Civil War, the Union had more soldiers than the South. So the South would force these African Americans, their slave owners would force them to be in the South so they could win against the Union. There was around 9 million soldiers in total in the South, and around 4 million were slaves, so it was almost half slaves in the Confederacy. That's because they forced them to do that. Also, many were granted the wish of being free after the Confederacy if they did their serving time. And they also did that in a union as well. So a lot of African Americans were forced, or either they wanted to grant their, they wanted to be free after the Confederacy.
You want to do your plant?
What?
I went ahead and gave it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so